Today on CityCast DC, for years, the question of whether to turn a former reservoir on North Capitol Street into a new town center was DC's most exasperating and persistent fight. But now the deal has gone through, and the former McMillan Sand Filtration Site is about to emerge as the Reservoir District, a huge swath of townhouses, retail, and office space. Mike Neibauer from the Washington Business Journal is here to tell us what it will actually look like. Today is Thursday, July 13th. I'm Michael Schaefer, and here's what DC is talking about. Mike Neibauer, thanks for being here.
My pleasure, Mike.
So anyone who's been a reporter or journalist covering the local beat in DC, which includes both of us, I think if you were to do like a survey of this demographic, people would probably vote the McMillan Sand Filtration issue DC's most annoying political issue. And this is a thing you've been covering. And they have just rebranded the area and are starting development. Apparently, a park and community center is going to open next year, finally.
Yep.
Why now?
Well, because the legal fights are over. I mean, that was the holdup. Trust me, the district, the folks in the DC government that are behind this, certainly the three-firm development team that's been a part of this for 16 years, they would have liked to have started this a whole lot earlier than now. There were protests, there were appeals, there were protests and appeals. There were people chaining themselves to things, lots of review, and it had to go back to the zoning commission, then come back to the court, and then for probably 7-8 years now of appeals. So we're past that, and now it's time to build. Those initial projects, that recreation center that's going to come up online next year, and the 8-acre park, these pieces that DC government are funding, they're first up, and they're under construction. The work is underway.
So for people who can't picture this in their minds, it's on North Capitol Street as you are heading up away from D.C. There is an area called it was the McMillan Sand Filtration Site. It has these sort of concrete pylons, and it has been for as long as I can remember, and I am almost 50.
115 years.
But it has been sort of derelict for a very long time. And I'll tell you a funny story, which is I once, like around the year 2000, I had this intern in my office, and she was taking a photography class. And I said to her, there's this weird area at the top of North Capitol Street, and you can take a picture of like the Capitol building, but like while like giant like weeds and stuff are growing, and it's a sort of interesting contrast. And she went in there to take that picture for one of the assignments in photography class, and she found a dead body. Which wound up being a story she wrote about. But which is just to say this was not a place where lots of people went and spent leisure time.
I mean, they weren't supposed to.
They weren't supposed to. There's a fence around it.
Yeah.
So what's going to be there?
So there are 3 different firms that are developing 3 different pieces. And last year, they bought the site from the district, this 25-acre site, minus the piece that DC continues to own that's going to be the park and the recreation center. The 3 different firms do 3 very different things. You have EYA, which is a Bethesda-based developer. They're developing 146 townhomes. Then you have Jair Lynch Real Estate Partners, and they are developing 2 apartment buildings, one over a grocery store, which for a while was supposed to be Harris Teeter, and I'm honestly not sure if it still is. Like, they will not say whether Harris Teeter is still part of this project or not. I know they had signed a lease, but these things only as a supermarket chain, how long can you sit around and wait? There's going to be senior housing in one building, I believe, and then you basically have 700 units or so over retail. So that is what is currently being rebranded as the Reservoir District.
So for those of us who aren't going to get one of those townhouses or live in the apartments, what it adds to the experience of DC is a new park and a little bit of retail. Is it just the supermarket, or there
will be other ground floor retail. I imagine it would be mostly neighborhood serving retail, like a dry cleaner or cafes, things like that, in addition to the supermarket.
But this is a neighborhood without a great deal of retail,
correct.
Storefront retail right now.
What the neighborhood is, it's Stronghold, it's Bloomingdale. It's right on the edge of a whole bunch of different neighborhoods.
And it's that part of North Capitol Street that feels almost like a freeway.
Yep.
It's not, it has historically not, or in recent history at least, not been a sort of charming pedestrian Washington.
No, and it still isn't. I mean, look, this is a 25-acre site. It's a blank slate. Now, of course, it's a historic site, so to a degree it's protected. But it's right immediately south of 3 hospitals there, right? It's a very busy corridor with a lot of commercial activity. You have Children's National, you have MedStar Washington Hospital Center, and then you have the VA Medical Center. They're all right there. And that is what's driving the commercial piece of McMillan, which is being done by the Trammell Crow Company. 1 million square feet of medical office is what they plan on. And they're not giving up McMillan yet. They're not leaving the McMillan name. They're calling it the McMillan Center for Health and Research.
But the rest of the district, they are branding as the Reservoir District.
Right.
Why do they need the rebrand?
Well, so McMillan, the sand filtration site, is, of course, adjacent to or very close to the McMillan Reservoir. And that's 92 acres in total. So this 25 acres is just one piece of it. Why do you rebrand? You rebrand to breathe new life into something that maybe doesn't have the best perception among people. I mean, when we write about McMillan, up until recently, it was the McMillan fight continues, the appeals continue, the battles continue. People hate this thing. People love this thing. They're trying to step away from that. Now, is Reservoir District the best name? I guess that's for someone else to debate. It's very bland. It feels very, marketing speak, but it's different. And so what they want you to do is not think about the 8 years of appeals that just happened.
Right.
And protests. They want you to think about something else, this new shiny thing that's going to be, on this site at North Capitol, Michigan First and Channing Place.
I would have called it Mickey Mills.
Capitol Fringe was founded in 2005 with a mission to celebrate cultural democracy and access to art and artistic expression for all. Capitol Fringe's annual festival is the only unjuried, self-producing live performance festival in the DC area. This year's productions open up an exploration into an array of human experiences, ranging from the tragic Knickerbocker theater collapse to lighthearted brunch humor, from grappling with things like dementia and skin cancer to the comedic relief of stand-up performances. There is a new 2-person Romeo and Juliet and stories influenced by Indigenous, Black, queer, and femme perspectives to a musical deep dive into the legends of bluegrass music. The festival's 27 productions are performed and will take place in 2 unoccupied office properties in Georgetown and 16 productions in 2 additional stages in DuPont Circle. The whole thing is going down July 12th through the 23rd, so go to capitolfringe.org to find out more.
Is the fight well and truly over?
There will always be opposition, but the legal fight, as I understand it, is over. And the main group that was leading the opposition, which was a group called Friends of McMillan Park, I visited their website the other day. It hasn't been updated in 2 years.
So just so folks know, paint with a broad brush here. Who's for the development? Who's against it?
Who's for the development? Well, obviously the development teams, right? And
I would hope so.
There are housing advocates who are in favor of it because there is the argument that the more housing you build, that helps lower the cost of housing, right? By filling the demand. That is an argument that can be made.
Right. How many blank slates like that are there in a big city like this?
Not many, and you got to take advantage. I mean, you have like Hill East, a lot east of the river that are even now, starting to be developed. People are not sitting on those anymore. And who else is in favor? Obviously, DC leaders. This is a lot of tax revenue that's going to be coming in. This is an economic builder, not only from the housing, but also, of course, from the commercial pieces. And, there are smart growth advocates who have been supporting this for some time.
And there were some neighbors who wanted a grocery store.
And absolutely, people who don't have access to the same kind of amenities that other parts of DC do. There are a lot of those. Now, the opposition has been more vocal. Whether they are a very, very vocal minority of people is another question.
But their argument was this is a giveaway to developers and it's taking away what could be open space.
Correct. So there's all sorts of arguments against it. It's too tall, too dense, that it's going to cause a traffic nightmare. It's not, next to Metro. It is not. Of course, it's served by buses, but it's not served by Metro Rail. There is the argument, and it's been going on for decades, that this area should be returned to its former life as a park. Now, the sand filtration plant.
Wait, because what the heck is sand filtration anyway?
So, I mean, I'm not a scientist. I'm not a technical guy, but basically, in the first decade of the 20th century, it was a water purification plant using sand silos and catacombs and filtering water before it gets to the reservoir. And it was a technological marvel, and one that deserved to be, on the National Register of Historic Places, which it is now. But that was really the district's first ever water purification plant. Several years later, a very well-known landscape architect named Frederick Olmsted designed a park around the sand filtration site. And then there were active and passive recreation nearby, sort of focused on the reservoir.
Right.
That became one of the district's first de facto integrated public open spaces. So when they say return it as a park, they're not necessarily talking about the plant itself.
Right. And there will be a park in this thing. It's just not going to occupy all or even most of it.
8-acre park. And there are certainly people who argue that's not enough, that there should be more open space within it. And that was certainly one of the arguments against this.
So like you said, people associate that word now, McMillan, with a fight, with a kind of often intractable seeming fight. And now it needs to make money for people and be like a thriving amenity for people. Putting on your prognostication hat, do you see this becoming like a real neighborhood with people living there and thriving in a year or 5 years?
Yeah. Once those townhomes go up, they'll sell. Once those apartments go up, they'll be rented. I don't know how the commercial office will do. I don't know how the medical office will do. I imagine Trammell Crow is not some small company that just does things willy-nilly without thinking there's a market for it. Clearly, with these three major healthcare centers immediately to the north, they see a demand for medical office. Given today's market and just the commercial office market generally, I don't know what 5 years from now will hold.
Sure.
But if they're doctor's offices, sure. And there's always demand for new Class A, the best kind of office space. Will they have 1 million square feet right away? No, I don't think so. I think it'll be built out in phases, but I think the residential will sell and will lease up quickly. And if they have a supermarket there, yeah, that'll become the neighborhood go-to.
I mean, this all started in a very different Washington, a very different world pre-pandemic, a time when people were going downtown and stuff. Mm-hmm. Do you think that the change in people's patterns is going to affect how this particular one works? I know it's not downtown.
No, it's definitely not downtown, but people in this day and age, I mean, if they're not moving to the suburbs, they do want that open space. That's a whole nother conversation about how you revive downtown. But the fact is, downtown has national parks in the National Mall, but it doesn't have a lot of like playgrounds and truly neighborhood type spaces. And that's what they're building here. So yeah, as long as you include the types of amenities that people want in a home today, they'll sell. And they're new. And that's what people want. They want new. I was there in 2007 when Vision McMillan Partners was selected as the master developer, as the master planner. I mean, I know one of the controversies of this whole thing is that they were selected as the master planner. And then in theory, what was supposed to happen was they were going to plan this out and then it would be rebid for other developers to maybe get a shot at developing this site. And that didn't happen. So that's one of the controversies here over how the district handled this. But as someone who's been around this project for 16 years in some way or another, as a reporter, as an editor, I'm just glad to see it move forward, because in the end, what you have is a derelict site. Yeah. And it's historic and it deserves to be something. And, we're going on 40 years. I mean, DC bought this in 1987.
Yeah.
So it is time. Let's move this forward and get something going there.
Mike, thank you so much for being here.
Of course. It's my pleasure.
And before you go, here is some quick news. Weapons detectors will be installed at all Prince George's County high schools this summer. Students will also be required to use clear backpacks. The protocol is meant to reduce gun violence. Metal detectors have also been installed recently in the Alexandria and Prince William County school systems. Also, Maryland has issued a drought watch in Montgomery County and other jurisdictions in the center and west of the state. Residents and businesses in the impacted area are being told to conserve water because there's a precipitation deficit. That's despite the recent storms. If things don't improve soon, the state will have to impose official water usage restrictions. And finally, Ohio Representative Jim Jordan has an odd suggestion for the new FBI headquarters. Alabama. Not Alabama Avenue, Alabama the state. He wrote a letter calling for the federal government to cancel funding for the new HQ in the DMV area and instead move it to Huntsville, Alabama. The FBI pushed back, saying the facility in Huntsville cannot accommodate the personnel needed for headquarters. That is all for today here on CityCast DC. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend, rate the show, leave us a review, and subscribe to our morning newsletter. We'll be back tomorrow morning with more news from around the city. Bye.